And I want you to be mine.
Don't pretend you're sorry, even if you're crying. You know how to make me worry. I can tell you're lying.
Looking through old photos, you and I were both of different kinds of colors. I'm glad I'm not yours.
Why am I feeling like
I
want you to be mine?
and I want you to be mine.
Looking through old photos, different kinds of colors.
And I want you to be
Looking through old photos, different kinds of colors. and I want you to be mine.
Bad days. I have my off days. We all do. We're human, right? But on those days, I choose to do something that will bring me up, whether it's reading a book or reading a quote or reading something, finding something positive to read, because I'm choosing to be better in life. and I choose happiness. You to connect the negatives with the positives in your life. And when you look at that, life becomes so much brighter, like so much brighter when you can do that. So, sometimes we have to reassess, like you to connect the negatives with the positives in your life. And when you look at that, life becomes so much brighter, like so much brighter when you can do that. Love you all, and you guys have an amazing, amazing Saturday.
Hi there, guys. Happy Thursday, the day before Friday. I've been searching for my headphones. That's why I did an extended intro, and I still can't find them. So hopefully I don't play anything that I can't hear. Usually Nancy Grace, you can hear her. So, hi, Jackie. I'm okay. Thanks for asking. I'm glad you're doing well. I really am. I'm always happy to hear when my listeners are doing well, because I know it's such a stressful time in everybody's lives right now. And if you're not stressed, then just consider yourself really lucky and keep it that way. Okay, so today I thought what we would do would talk about the updates on the Bryan Kohberger case. I don't know if I've talked about this case in a while. I think it's been a week or two. But there's been some updates. Bryan Kohberger is getting letters from, oh, you're pretty stressed too. Well, you know what? I'm sending you my love, because stress is just no good. Yesterday, I woke up with it and I went to bed with it. And today, so far, I do not have it tremendously. So I thought I would do this live, and what we're going to talk about is the Bryan Kohberger, and apparently he's getting women writing him in prison. Of course, we knew this was going to happen. It happened in the Watts case, and it's like, it doesn't disgust me when people write people in prison. It disgusts me when people write people in prison for love. And maybe it doesn't disgust me as much as it kind of makes me sad for them, because I know that there's something happening in their life. So, but there's that woman who's doing that. And then there's also Nancy Grace is talking about all of his unsettling behaviors, which I'm sure she's going to talk about him being fired from his teaching assistant job, and that he was treating the female students differently than the male students. He was even grading them differently. And eventually he got fired. So I'm sure she's going to be talking about that. But just before I came on, this seems to be happening every time I come on. But I want to quickly talk about the Watts case. There's a little bit of an update on the Watts case, and so I just want to throw that in here. I don't think it's enough to do its own live on, but I was doing some videos this morning, and I came across, I know that there was a video done, there's been some discussion about whether it's ethical to keep driving by the Watts house or not. I say it is, as long as it's like not like a ton of times in a day, like maybe if you're coming like every 3-4 months just to check the place out, because they bought what they bought and they knew what they were buying. And there's other haunted houses out there, the John Benet Ramsey house, there's the Amityville, there's the John Gacy. So you kind of get what you buy. I don't say like be rude and like, disturb them or anything, but you knew what you were buying. And so that's my kind of stance on it. But also in this discussion, this woman has been driving by the house. I don't know how many times she went by. I just have her one video, but she went by during the Christmas season. The Millers, the new Millers, the people in the house are named the Millers, and they are in the house. And with all the discussion of whether she should be driving by it or not, one of my viewers actually pointed out that the door is a different color. I didn't even notice it, but the door is a different color on the house. And I just want to show the video real quick to, in case you didn't notice, and the big discussion of whether you should or shouldn't go by the house. Yeah, wow, what's updates? I've got a little one eking out, new to me, new within since December, I would say. But in the discussion of whether you should or shouldn't be driving by the house, I noticed, well, my one of my viewers noticed that the door is painted differently on the house. So I'm going to show you the video. It's just going to be a really quick drive by, pun intended. Okay. Okay. So the drive-by person, this is her channel, Mandy Vlogs. She's right here. She's gotten quite a few views on this, so I don't know if she's a true channel or just this case just seems to interest her. But here we go.
Wow. Shanann's house is lived in again, and it looks
See,
like
right there. The house. Unless the only thing is if it could be like, you know how people put overlays or like what are those called, decorations on the doors. I did it when I lived in an apartment one year for Halloween, although to me it looks like that's the house. They painted it white. So let's watch it.
House is lived in again, and it looks like it's so loved. She would be so happy right now, or if an investor just bought it, and who knows what their plans are with it. I guess we'll see when we pull up if it's lived in. But I know it did recently just sell. Such a beautiful neighborhood. The roads are like super icy. It snows pretty heavily. It looks like Shanann's house.
It's a lot of fun too because they decorated it, and I wish this had been someone had went at night to see it because I love Christmas decorations lit up at night, and it would have just been really fun to see the house lit up.
Is being lived in again after it just recently sold. And it looks like it's so loved, and that gloomy feeling, obviously it's always going to be here. But look, Shanann would love all these, details that have gone into decorating her house. It's a shame that what occurred had to happen with her and her daughters, because this is such a beautiful neighborhood, and you can tell the house was so loved by Shanann from all the posts she would make, you know. But here it is.
So it was definitely a positive video. The woman seems to really love and appreciate Shanann and the girls.
Shanann's house.
This I just found this just before I came on, or else I would have put it in one of my editors and got up closer because I really want to see the front.
Lived in.
It looks like there's something right here on it. That's the only reason why I think it might be an overlay, but I also find it strange that they don't have like vertical blinds on their windows. It does look like they have some curtains, but it doesn't look like there's any vertical blinds. And I would hope that these are their children's they are their children's rooms, and that they do seem to have blinds or something on there. They've got these kind of Christmas decorations, which I prefer these kind. I don't like those blow up ones. simply because they look like crap during the day. They're just like they look like crap during the day. So I want something. I like things that look good year round or year round during the day and at night. But let's watch it one more time because I did have some things I wanted to say during it, but I just wanted it to run by one time. Um, yeah, I just wanted to run it by one more time, and I have some things to say.
It looks like Shanann's house is being lived in again after it's just recently sold. And it looks like it's so loved and that gloomy feeling.
It really kind of does take on that new homey feeling, but I don't know if it's because it's the decorations and the change of the house,
And
the door,
obviously, it's always going to be
color of the
here.
door.
But look, Shanann would love all these, details that have gone into decorating her house.
She probably would like it, but there would probably be things that she would tweak.
It's a shame that what occurred had to happen with her and her daughters because this is such a beautiful neighborhood and you can tell the house was so loved by Shanann from all the.
Do you think that the Millers are, since they changed the color of the door, do you think they're going to change the color of the rest of the house? I think they might. I think they probably will
Posts she would make.
get it out of that puke diarrhea brown.
But here it is.
So also when I saw that they had see, we can kind of see what the door looked. Just look how awful. But I'm not a fan of the white or the cream that they painted it. I'm not really unless they're going to change the whole house, then I can understand it, but I think a darker color would have been better. I know that in feng shui, the color of the house of the color of the door of the front door of the house means something. And so I thought it would be fun just to look up what it means. The color of the door. And this isn't feng shui. This is a different page. This is from the Fitzpatrick Windows Roofing. It's just something fun I think they threw up there. So blue, depending on the shade, a blue front door can mean you're prosperous and positive. Royal blue, calm and grounded. Dark blue, or friendly and sincere, powder blue. So yellow front doors are pretty uncommon, but often say a lot. You're confident, curious, wise, humorous, and understanding. You'll also possibly spark the interest of your neighbors. A white front door will tell neighbors that you're clean, organized, simple, and serene. A black front door is the most common front door. It was an early American tradition. A red door meant welcome, while bright red says you're exciting and vibrant. A darker red can mean you're warm and inviting. It just goes on and on with all the colors. But a black color symbolizes order and control. It will tell people that you're sophisticated and authoritative. Let's see what a brown one means because it was brown. Depending on the shade, brown can mean you're warm and reliable, light brown, or introverted and private, dark brown. Chris Watts picked out the dark brown front door. And dark brown means introverted and private. Get out. What was the color of Shanann's front door in her North Carolina house? Let me just look really quick. See if I can. Oh, okay, there it is. It looks like it's like a light brown. So what did I just say light brown was? Where was it?
Take the next right onto Peninsula Drive, then your destination will be on the right.
Okay, so light brown was warm and reliable. So Shanann chose a light brown door, and that represents warm and reliable. And old Chrissy, idiot, chose dark brown, which means introverted and private. If I had a door to choose, I think, I guess it would depend on the outside of my house, but I like yellow doors. Um, I saw a house with a yellow door once and it was just like beautiful. I like the unusual. I would like a light blue. So, yeah. All right, then let's switch over to what we came here for. I just want to remind you that you've got it tuned into Parawoman Radio, and I'm Amy. If you could give this video a thumbs up if you like my content, please consider subscribing. And if you subscribe, be sure to ring the bell because that way you will be notified when I upload new content. I wanted to show you something really quick that I'm working on. It's Feel Good University, Earn Your BA and Happy. It's a new channel that I'm opening up, FGU, because doing the true crime, I really have decided that I need to be able to transition over to something good. So really quickly, I'm starting a new channel to go along with this one. It's called Feel Good University, Earn Your BA and Happy. So moving on to the Kohberger case, let me share my screen. We're going to be watching the Nancy Grace and the Bryan Kohberger. Look at her. She's furious. Nancy Grace is furious. I love Nancy here, and I feel like either you love Nancy or you hate her. And the same with Banfield. You either love her or you hate her. And I happen to love them both. And so let's see what Nancy has to say about Bryan Kohberger, shall we?
End with Bryan. Hi, everybody. Does it never end with Bryan Kohberger?
And I'll be stopping it for fair use. I have to. Also, I'm going to let it play for just a minute. I'm going to look for my headphones because I can't hear very well.
Kohberger, as you know, stands accused of the slaughter of 4 innocent and beautiful students there at University of Idaho. And in the past days, we learn of reports that Kohberger was fired from his job as a teaching assistant there at WSU, Washington State University, about 10 miles away from where the murders occurred. With me is high-profile lawyer out of Jacksonville and also Fed former agent with the FBI, Dale Carson. Dale, what is your law firm website? Is it dalecarsonlaw.com?
It is.
Okay, I can't believe I knew that by heart. That's scary. So I guess if I ever get a DUI, I'll be calling you. What do you think about these reports? Now, you know he was a PhD student, and he was basically a teaching assistant, mentoring young students. He was at PhD level, so I guess they would have been at the either master or the undergrad.
I can't find them, but I just hope that you can't hear. I live pretty close to a busy road, and I just hope you can't hear that. But okay, here we go.
Graduate level, probably undergraduate level. And from what we're learning, he was let go because he had a, quote, sexist attitude toward women, and that he was, quote, rude to women and graded them differently than he graded men. I mean, doesn't that just fit hand in glove with a misogynistic
Absolutely.
anger toward women?
Absolutely. I mean, this is true of a misogynist who, you know, who is full of himself. I mean, he's full of himself, and oftentimes these narcissists believe that they're really competent when they're not competent at all. They may be confident.
Now, wait a minute, wait a minute. I thought you were a former FBI agent and lawyer. When did you get your degree in psychoanalysis?
You know, I did this. I taught this for the FBI.
Oh, darn, I thought I had you over a barrel. Well,
No,
it's
no,
hard for me to
I
fight
actually
with
taught some of this.
teaching at Quantico. Okay, you beat me.
Wow. Wouldn't that be something to have taught at Quantico? I mean, wow.
Again, go ahead, eating a dirt sandwich.
I see this as just consistent. Remember, previously in his other life, he was fired from the bar or prohibited from being in a bar for asking women what their address
Is that not
right?
creepy? Dale, don't use that
Completely
pickup
creepy.
line. Especially don't let your
Would
wife.
what would you do if a man came up to you while you were out in public, like at a bar or nightclub or whatever, and they come up and say, "Hey, where do you live?" Nowhere where I want you to find me.
I find out you're using that pickup line at a bar. Hey, what's your home address, Sydney? I would run for the hills as if I had seen a monster.
Absolutely, you would. And of course, this may have been the triggering mechanism for this slaughter that happened in Idaho. I mean, this guy.
Oh, do you think
clearly
it's
is not happy
possible
with-
that because he had just, when I saw this, I thought maybe it was the triggering because it happened just before the murders. And I feel like it had to have been discussed that he was, treating the women differently and he was grading them differently and making them feel incredibly uncomfortable. Oh, what a nightmare that would be to be a student and have your, just off. Ugh.
women and is going to take advantage of them where he can. Is angry now. He's been discharged as a teaching assistant where he's seeking a PhD. I mean, talk about humiliating. I mean, he's got to be just angry, boiling over. And now all of a sudden, people who were previously targeted become the target for his animus, his anger. And he drives over after he's been fired. He looks to make sure they're still there, which they are. And we know this from the actual, not wiretaps, but the looking at the transmission of his phone signal to the cell towers over repeatedly.
Does this case does this case not make you question all your moves when you were in college? It does me. It does me.
And he does this to these victims.
Can I ask you something, Dale?
Yeah.
Okay. Dale Carson, FBI agent / lawyer / behavior analyst. Have you ever had a job where you had to, if not totally suck up to your boss, at least be nice to them? Ever? Have you ever had a job like that?
Well, of course.
Yes.
Kohberger actually had an altercation with a professor just a couple of weeks into the job. I mean, you can't just get along for 2 weeks without fighting with another professor?
Well, the only way to.
I feel like this case also has made me rewatch You, that show You, just YOU. It's about a guy stalker. And each season he seems to stalk a new person. But it really makes me look at the You and pay attention to the dialogue.
To figure out what somebody's going to do in the future is to look at their past. And when you do this in connection with Kohberger, we can see that he is an individual who has a lot of anger and hostility, particularly toward women. And although this wasn't necessarily a predictable outcome, it certainly is an outcome that follows with the evidence. And
Usually, when men have hostility towards women in particular, there's a mother issue somewhere. And I just wonder what the mother issue is, because on all reports, everyone had said the mother, who is a substitute teacher, was like the sweetest, dearest thing ever.
Case, there's a substantial body of evidence to suggest he did this crime. He may be innocent until proven guilty, but the substantial nature of the evidence against him seems irrefutable.
Del Carson, something I used to love to do when I was trying cases and still do it now. I like to take one piece of evidence, and I learned this from an earring that was found near the body of a Jane Doe who was a victim of who I believe was a serial killer. And we could get him on one case, one, where the earring was as opposed to the other earring, just a lot. And I thought about what can that one earring prove? It proved to me that the murder happened somewhere else, and this was a dumping site. It proved to me that there was a struggle because it had been ripped out of her ear. I went on and on and on. I ended up being able to prove like 4 or 5 things based on the location of the earring and how it got there. Let's think about this, Dale. Let's just think about this for a minute. He had an altercation with a professor just a few weeks into the job as a teaching assistant, a TA. Then, hold on, wait for it. Then he had to meet to discuss a problem with his professional behavior. They discussed the way he was treating women, that he was, quote, sexist, and graded them differently than he graded men. Sexist attitude, rude to men, graded women differently. Then later on, there was another altercation with a professor. Another altercation. It's like, and then he was officially terminated 10 days later. Don't you think he would have learned the first time he had an altercation with a professor? He's just a TA, a teaching assistant. They're a dime a dozen. They're a student.
I don't think he would have learned, because I'm sure that even though he was just a TA, he thought he was much above being a TA. He thought he was probably above the professor. He probably thought he knew more than the professor. I'd be willing to bet on it. I bet my pony on it. But I do want to say this is Parawoman Radio, and this is Amy. If you like this content, if you could give me a thumbs up, because it helps send this content out into the algorithm. And also, if you like the content, please consider subscribing. And if you subscribe, make sure you ring the bell for all my notifications.
Extra money or getting a break in tuition by helping, mentoring younger students. And he fought with the professor not once, but twice. So my question is, what can we learn from his uncontrolled behavior and his lack of impulse control? And as you said, in nicer words, when you don't know a horse, look at his track record. What will he do behind closed doors with a sleeping girl if he'll do this with a superior?
Well, here's the thing that frightens me. These women, and it's in the record, frankly, knew that there was something wrong with him. They knew, because fortunately, women have an ability to sense out that stuff, and it makes the hair stand up on the back of their necks, and they know that the person's going to be a problem. And clearly, that was information that was never fully metabolized by the institution where he was seeking his degree. And the fact that they kept asking him if he wouldn't change his behavior is a big clue about the universally.
A lot of times there's structure, they have to follow procedure, protocol. So he probably had to offer him these supervisions before he let him go. He had to give him probably a few chances, and then some supervision to try to improve whatever the problem was.
Bad manner in which students are instructed today. When I was growing up, if that had happened and you mistreated somebody and it came to everybody knew of it, all of a sudden you'd just be out of a job right then. There wouldn't be any time for you to think about whether or not you could improve.
Everybody wants to save their own butt,
that's
though.
right.
I am probably pretty positive that there's some kind of protocol for all of this that they have to follow before they can let him go.
Frightening to me. And all those women that he was attempting to teach.
Attempting to stalk. I wonder how many of them he actually stalked. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's exactly the mechanism.
Isn't it interesting that he probably did stalk some of them, but none of them were the ones chosen, the ones that were right in front of him?
Know that molesters develop patterns and methodologies really for tracking potential victims.
Let's think this thing through, Dale. If he was being stricter on women in the grading than he was on men, I mean, if you want to get a date with somebody, the last thing you're going to do is give them a bad grade, right? So what does it mean that he desired women, but yet he was harder and more strict with women than he was with men? And also, it tells me he cannot change his behavior.
It's what I think is the makeup of an incel, because not all incels are unattractive. Bryan Kohberger is not an ugly, I wouldn't call him a handsome fella, but he's not ugly by any means. And so there's behavioral traits and patterns that make them undesirable, and this must be one of them.
In a professional sense. Like,
well, and it would be interesting to see. It would be interesting to see which women were given good grades.
It would be interesting.
That would give you an idea of his attempt to manipulate them into a position where he could take advantage of them.
Impulse control, for instance. He became obsessed with criminology. He wanted to work with police to go to crime scenes, see crime scene photos. That didn't work. That didn't fulfill him. It kept going and going till he stalked these people on social, started going to their house all the time, spying on them, breaks in. He still didn't stop. Then he attacks him, stabs him, still didn't stop. Stab. He wouldn't stop. He couldn't stop. We see that in this behavior. He treats one woman after the next rudely and in a sexist manner. He is reprimanded for it. There is no change. He could not stop, even though he knew he was risking losing his job. When he started stabbing, he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop himself at any point in the scenario we're laying out. That would be my argument.
Well, and of course, the pattern of these individuals who are so full of themselves, they don't think anybody else is right.
Yeah.
So our opinions don't matter. His is the most important, and I can see him pressing that forward with his professors that are trying to correct his behavior.
Yep.
It just wouldn't work. And of course, he was now in a situation where being cast out from that group would be just absolutely devastating, and he would have to blame somebody else.
It would be devastating to his career. It wouldn't look good if at the end of your career or your schooling that you are fighting with a professor.
He couldn't say, you know what, I did this to myself. I should have behaved better. I shouldn't have been so hard on those students. But that's not his ability. His ability is to focus that energy on an outside party, and that's what, in my view, triggered the anger and frustration that appeared in that night that he slaughtered 4 people.
Also, what can I learn from this one incident? He had a meeting about his behavior with his bosses just before the murders.
Yes, and you know although he's an organized killer from my perspective, there are two types: organized and disorganized.
Mm-hmm.
For the organized killer, time becomes really a critical feature. For disorganized killers, it's not a critical feature at all because they don't have any awareness at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that happened for him in the killings was that he ran out of time. And he ran out of time. He couldn't prepare to clean up his act, if you will, or to hide evidence. And I know recently there's some information that you brought forward.
Do you think that's perhaps how he was so sloppy that night because he ran out of time? He had been planning it, but he had gotten fired, so he had to leave. So he needed to do what he needed to do. And also, Kaylee was getting ready to leave campus. So I don't know. But it's also, you can argue that he had planned it for that night because Kaylee was leaving campus.
2 months ago when we started talking about this, and that's the sheep that he had, and that sheep that had Marine emblems on it, you know, there was some question about whether he left it or not to misdirect him, and that's current information. I mean, that's just coming out today. But you and I talked about that several months ago, that there was a good possibility he did that. His failing was to take enough time to make sure there was absolutely no DNA on that sheep. And of course, if you're to believe the government's position, it was they who found on the snap his DNA, which ultimately led to the affidavit for his arrest in Pennsylvania.
In another turn, we have learned that Pennsylvania police are sifting through cold cases for possible links to Bryan Kohberger. Now, we've been talking about that for a long time, but now we're getting official confirmation.
Thank goodness. That will be truly interesting to see if there's any more cases associated with him. I did see that in Moscow, Idaho, some woman was almost attacked at her doorway, and the guy was trying to pound, and he had his hand on the doorknob, and she was pushing the door shut, and she said he came out of nowhere. And I just think it's so strange that in that small town they would have another incident like that.
That 2 law enforcement offices in Pennsylvania are reportedly sifting through cold cases to search for links to Bryan Kohberger. Northampton County and Lehigh County started looking for links following his arrest. What do you make of that? Many people have surmised, have pontificated, for lack of a better phrase, this ain't his first rodeo. Do you believe, yes or no, he has struck before?
Well, it's hard to know. This killing that he's accused of course, is monumental when it comes to the effort that he has to go through. The startup period that led to this, if it actually came from the school and the problem he was having there with being discharged, took a lot of time to get him wound up and to do this slaughter. Has he done it before? He certainly has tried to approach people before. I don't think there's any question of that. But to actually step over the line and injure somebody, I think we would know that information by now. Certainly local law enforcement.
Okay, I want to stop it right here. We did a little Watts update in the beginning. I'm not going to go much more on this case. As soon as this Nancy Grace is done, we'll be done. So then you can go to the beginning of the live, or if you want to go back and listen to it now, you feel free to do that. If you're just here for the Watts case updates. We're listening to Nancy Grace talk about updates on the Bryan Kohberger. It has come out that he was fired from his TA job just prior to him committing the murders.
At least in Pennsylvania have looked into that. The problem is everybody's so mobile today. He could have killed somebody in another state in
They
another.
are also looking into finally the police officers are looking into if Bryan Kohberger was associated with any other murders, thus making him a serial
Time
killer.
frame, and so you just don't know. But that's what VICAP for the FBI is all about. That's the Violent Criminal Apprehension
Thanks,
Program.
Twizzler
And what they
Gobbler.
do is they take all the information from all of the various killers all over the country, and they crush them down into modus operandi. So that's where we're going to find out if he's done this before, or through the DNA that is now so effective in identifying people from decades ago that have killed individuals. As long as that evidence is.
I did a show back when Parawomen Radio was only audio, and we were on Blog Talk and Apple and just only on those platforms. And I had a woman come on, and she talked about how easy it is to get DNA mixed up, and how just because you have DNA at a case doesn't necessarily mean that they had anything to do with it. I'll try to find that and upload it.
Kept, the chain of custody preserved, and the evidence of these murders preserved, where they're able to go back decades and identify somebody who's been there and was a potential suspect perhaps at the time, but there was not sufficient evidence to actually charge him.
Another thing is he may not have committed murders before, but he may have, and I fully believe he has, stalked before.
Yes.
Peeping Tom.
Yes.
Before, maybe assaulted.
Yes.
Before.
That is so smart, Nancy. Let me just tell you, when I taught this,
look at Nancy, and it's like, dang right, I'm smart.
Who would climb 30-foot trees with a pair of binoculars to watch a potential victim.
Whoa, wait a minute. Climb 30 feet.
That's so much work.
Look in a window.
Just to look at somebody.
Serious?
Absolutely.
That's a killer waiting to happen right there if you're going to climb a tree
yes.
30 feet. Dale Carson, have you ever climbed a tree?
Oh, I have, certainly.
I've climbed a tree. Oh, yes, we climbed trees. In fact, I was up in a tree the first time I could ever pronounce an R. Little known fact, when I was growing up, I couldn't say an R. I would say Wibble. And that's really bad if your name is Nancy Grace.
Yeah,
and I climbed up a tree and I was practicing my R's. Of course, we didn't have
Nancy
speech therapy or anything like that then. And I was going, Wibble, Wibble. So he said, River! And I heard it. And I jumped in and ran through the house going, River, River. So it's not easy to climb up a tree, Carson. And then you're telling me there's a guy who climbed 30 feet up a tree just a peeping Tom?
Well, think about this. This is a biologic imperative driven by obsession. And the combination of those two exponentially leads to an energy that I don't think most people can well understand.
You just used a lot of words to say masturbate, didn't you?
All right. Well, if you're crazy about looking at some gal through a window in the middle of the night, you're going to do what you have to do, just like I believe Kohberger did by laying out in the back of that house and watching.
I walk around my house now just to see like what's outside. I look to see if I look for like cigarette butts. I look to see if there's any cans, bottles, any disturbances. I set things up where I think somebody might like try to walk through the night and like trip over, like won't know it's there and trip. Yeah, this case has done that for me.
Montage of windows that would appear in front of him backlit so that he could see directly into the rooms of these individuals that he ultimately is accused of slaughtering.
You know what, Dale? I bet he did that many more times than we know. And I remember in the warrant, it said at least 12 times. They're not limiting themselves to just 12 peeping Toms. That's what it boils down to. I think he has peeping Tommed before. I think that he may have groped women before. He definitely belittled them or had misogynistic attitudes toward them before this.
You're right here, because women this is statistical. And I taught it back in 1989, 90, and I can just tell you that women are very reluctant to report that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So the frequency with which it happens, we don't really
They're
know.
reluctant because we're often not believed, or we're told there's nothing that can be done.
Actual statistics, because women are concerned about reporting it. And it previously, years ago, of course.
And they don't want to look like a Karen. We don't want to look like we're out of control. We don't want to make waves. We don't want to be a Karen.
It was considered a woman's fault if that happened. Now we've since matured out of that and understand that the men are responsible for their own behavior. But for many decades,
it didn't take me. I didn't have a dawning. I knew that the first time I heard about it. That it's the man's fault. It's the attacker's fault. But I am wondering if he had groped women, brushed up against them in an inappropriate or intentional manner. I guarantee you.
I guarantee he has done that.
Yeah.
Of course,
and
he's
it
done
happens
that.
in elevators frequently. And that's why if you ever get on the elevator with a strange person, you push all the buttons. That's your first step toward personal safety.
Does this mean you've read my book, Don't Be a Victim? Because that's in there, elevator safety. Okay, so what can we glean? We know that he couldn't stop himself. He could not control his behavior. He could not keep the bus in the middle of the road, even when he needed to save his job. He still couldn't do it. He could not change his behavior. And I think Dale Carson.
I don't think he wanted to change his behavior.
Yes, I'll say it too. I'll jump on the bandwagon. This ain't his first time at the rodeo.
He didn't feel like he needed to change his behavior.
To what degree he has broken the law or violated women in one way or another, but I know this is not the first time. Now, if we can prove it. Dale Carson joining me, DaleCarsonLaw.com.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see if we can connect him to any more cases. I pretty much think that he has done, well, I know he's done something, but it'll just be interesting to see if we figure anything else out. I want to remind you that I'm doing Feel Good University, Earn Your BA and Happy. All this true crime has made me want to start something positive. So I'm starting that channel. We're just going to put up positive things, animals and humans, and just positivity. So thank you everyone for watching. This is Parawoman Radio and I'm Amy. Thanks Jackie215, Jackie and Twizzler Gobbler for stopping in and saying hi. I appreciate all my subscribers. If you could give this video a like, or all my viewers, I don't know if you're subscribers, but I appreciate you for coming through, and I hope that you would consider subscribing, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bad days. I have my off days. We all do. We're human, right? But on those days, I choose to do something that will bring me up, whether it's reading a book or reading a quote or reading something, finding something positive to read, because I'm choosing to be better in life, and I choose happiness. You to connect the negatives with the positives in your life, and when you look at that, life becomes so much brighter, like so much brighter when you can do that. So, you know, sometimes we have to reassess, like really to connect the negatives with the positives in your life. And when you look at that, life becomes so much brighter, like so much brighter when you can do that. Love you all, and you guys have an amazing, amazing Saturday.